the rise of blockchain technology from cryptocurrency to NFT art. Thank you all for coming. This is going to be our first seminar host at Digital Art Fair. So today we have two speakers with us. Nick here is from Refinable. Sorry. Go to the next slide. So I will introduce myself quickly. I am the fair director and co-founder of Digital Art Fair. Nick is co-founder of Refinable. I have John, from the founder of Wonder Chain, which is a cryptocurrency expert for VC. Well, John will be better to introduce them. Maybe we'll give them a quick minute to introduce what they do.
Okay, sure. Hi. Yeah, as Gillian mentioned, I'm John. I'm founder of Run the Chain. We do MarTech marketing and investments on the cryptocurrency space, as well as education and webinars like this.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming over to the first seminar. So my name is Nick. I'm one of the co-founders for Refinable. So Refinable is a decentralized NFT marketplace that works on multiple chains. And the thing we're trying to do is really to increase accessibility for people to work with NFT content. So yeah, thanks for Gillian for the introductions.
Thank you. So I think a lot of you probably one of the very first time to see an art fair that was focused on NFT art, focused on technology. And I think a lot of you have this question about what actually is an NFT and what is its value. The beginning of 2021, there were a lot of news coming out, and especially the words NFTs all over the news. And for sure, people will be a very familiar name to a lot of art collectors and wondering, why does it worth so much money to buy a JPEG? So today, I think our goal is to talk about what it is. And we have two of the experts here who will be able to answer some of your questions that you might have and some of the things that you might not have thought about NFT as well. So let's get it started. So we're going to talk about a little bit more about what is actually happening in the market, what is on the news lately. And so here, this is one of the news that came out earlier this year in the New York Times magazine. And it's called The Untold Story of the NFT Boom. So I think, how many people here have heard about Beeple? Would you mind raising your hand? Great. Any one of you know how much it was sold for? US dollar, yes. So I think once that came out, and that I think we can all fairly say that that is an NFT boom for sure, because it was the record price of an NFT ever sold on auction. And it was one of the third highest price auction art piece that ever been in the market. There was a lot of question in the art industry, especially how could a JPEG cost that much money? And I guess this is the time that we can ask the expert here, what is it, what happened, and maybe a little bit that you can share about that.
Yeah, so I guess I can go first. So I think yeah, thanks Gillian for the general intro about NFTs. I think it gives a pretty good understanding of sort of where we are in the timeline of onboarding of a lot of these digital assets into our daily lives. So I think we're really at the start of the sort of the period of when this really becomes normalized. So I think a lot of the big question comes down to, how can people pay so much money for something that's just a JPEG or a GIF or something along those lines? It doesn't feel natural to pay so much money for something that can be easily stolen or saved online. So I think one of the ways that I do like to explain this is it's really good to understand what exactly NFTs are. Right. So I think a lot of people have heard these terms in the news. So the way that I always like to explain it is that NFTs are just a unique ID system. much like everyone here has a Hong Kong ID or a Hong Kong passport or a passport from somewhere. And on these documents, you have a unique ID that points to you as a Hong Kong person, that points to me as a Hong Kong person. And this number really never duplicates or repeats. So now with NFT, you have a new technology that can really track all items in the world, including this chair, this couch, you know, a zip file, a JPEG, everything on the same database. And on top of that, you can write a lot of custom software. I think you can write apps on top of these items. And so you get into a place where anytime you can write an app, such as anytime this chair gets sold, you donate 5% back to someone else. Or perhaps if I own a certain JPEG in my wallet, then it gives me, you know, 20% discount at Ling Crawford. Amazing, right? So I think these are some of the ways that we kind of explain what NFTs can and cannot do. But I think now we're sort of in the very beginnings part of figuring out, oh, wow, we can actually own digital files that previously wasn't available before. Yeah, you can store it in your computer, but how do you really kind of own something? So now you kind of have this thing that enables a lot of things that can happen in the past. And I think this kind of like snowballs into something greater, which I think John will definitely talk about later on in terms of what exactly does it mean to own something, being part of a community, the hype cycle and the hype marketing. So I think this is a good place to sort of get John in. So I think it's for him to really talk about the stuff that he's been investing in and he's seeing on the trend side from the VC and investor perspective.
Yeah, so I think from a kind of technology perspective, there's a lot of things we can do with NFTs beyond you know, arts and collectibles and stuff like that. I think as far as the value of these NFTs go, I think it really comes down to the subjective perspective of what resonates with you, what narrative it has value to you. And I think that with people, that was actually like 5,000 pieces in one. So the people who really have been following people for a while, you know, I think that they really do appreciate him to that degree, right? And as far as like what NFTs can do outside of collectibles and art is it's still like Nick said, it's ownership. However, I think that if you apply that to video game assets, that makes them tradable, right? Maybe you want to lend your shield or sword in some sort of video game to another player, right? So then you have passive income. You're not going to play that game for the next month. You're going to lend out your character's items. So then there's a whole kind of economy that you can kind of add to this existing video game ecosystem. Also kind of going back to what Nick said about unique identifiers, this could be something that ultimately helps replace the ICANN system, right? What I mean by this is like is one kind of like centralized organization. They control the internet. What I mean by that is like the names, the URL. So I could point you, instead of going to HSBC, to another website if I could take control of that, right? So if we could develop, you know, this technology and as such to where it becomes a replacement for that, there's a lot of different applications, right? So I think just to kind of like speak to the ecosystem side, I think that NFT gaming, you know, even in the context of like medical data, you know, and the things you can do with kind of like creating an NFT with one piece of data, adding value to that data, burning the original NFT, and then piecing together a new NFT that has the like sequence data, and then you have the interpreted data, and then you have a new piece of data with the sequence and interpreted data. But before I go too deep, let's probably move on.
So thank you for the very quick introduction of what is NFT. But I think a lot of us sitting here still have a lot of questions about what you guys just said, because I think to a lot of art collectors, this is a very new concept, from the technology, from how blockchain actually worked, to I guess people would be the biggest question mark, and I think it will probably remain a big question mark. But maybe we can have a look on other news that came out. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Okay. This we quickly cover this as well, but maybe we can quickly talk about digital art fair for an example. So you're all here and you have seen quite a few digital art outside. Quite a lot of them are probably some of the photographers you have followed on Instagram, and you probably have seen the physical artwork of them outside before digital art fair. And I think a lot will be thinking, this is the first time you're actually seeing digital art being displayed physically. And I guess maybe we can also talk a little bit about how does that actually work when you purchase an NFT. Obviously, people and all this very expensive NFT was one thing that we're wondering about. But we can come back to understand the logic of NFT and the transaction. Then maybe it will be a good place to start with this conversation. And we can maybe again go back to other expensive art again.
Yeah, so I mean, speaking on the what actually happens when an NFT is transferred. So basically, run a business or you go to 7-Eleven and you buy, usually you can pay your credit card and there's a credit card company that tracks all of these transactions. So usually there's a lot of overhead, someone has to verify all of these things. But I think the cool thing about blockchain and what NFTs can really do is that you can kind of automate everything that kind of happens over there. So from Refinable side, I mean, we are an NFT marketplace and we allow the buying and the selling of these items, but we also automate it so that it's infinitely scalable. Meaning what we do is that we write a contract or a custom software once, and anyone can start selling their items for whatever price that they want, and anyone else can come and buy it immediately. So you don't need a third party to really be there to authenticate it. The money is automatically transferred. And technically, Refinable doesn't even have to take custody of any tokens or any items, because technically these are all happening directly from one person, from the buyer to the seller. So in fact, what really happens is that the NFT is actually an official receipt that you guys actually own this certain item. So there's a lot of these things that happen on a background, much like how, you know, barcodes are everywhere now, but I think they only started coming out around the early 1900s, and they kind of just dominated the entire supply chain for, you know, convenience stores and supermarket. And I do think the NFT is sort of one of the core examples of how we are revolutionizing digital transactions. You know, if you can buy a bubble gum, you know, 100 years ago without a barcode, now you can buy with a barcode, and you can buy billions of it. But maybe next time you can buy a picture of a bubble gum through NFT. So I think there's a natural evolution of these things, and it's definitely going to get more mature. But I do think in the next couple of years, we're definitely going to see more and more real world applications, not just on the digital art side, but also more inside the real world, running marketing campaigns, you know, similar to how in Welcome, you can, every month you spend $100, you get a stamp, and you collect 100 stamps, you can get an oven. So I think something like this can definitely be run with NFT technology, and you can track all of these very easily. So this is just one sort of the examples of how NFTs are actually being transacted and how it can actually be used.
Yeah, I also think one important kind of facet on the tech side worth mentioning is that when you buy an NFT, you're not actually buying the JPEG on chain. So the JPEG or the, you know, GIF or the video isn't ever actually on chain. This is actually being stored on IPFS, which is Interplanetary File System, or Arweave, which is another kind of blockchain where you can store data. So the actual NFT that's in your wallet, so you have a private key that's in your wallet, you never show that shows ownership of the public key on chain, that's the NFT, and that NFT has a reference point in the smart contract to IPFS or Arweave, right? And I think that as a standard, if you're trading on OpenSea, for example, you want to look at the smart contract, go to etherscan.io and check the smart contract if there is an IPFS reference. Just because it doesn't have it doesn't mean it's necessarily a scam, but by and large, if you don't see the IPFS reference, that means that it's probably not, you know, a legitimate NFT. But I think my point here being that the reference point, the NFT itself, just states that you own X, you know, indelible item. So it's like a non-fungible item. That could be a car, it could be a house, it could be a in-game asset, it could be a number of things that is a unique item one-to-one. It's not fungible. Like a US dollar, I can trade one-to-one for a US dollar. Anything that is non-fungible, not exchangeable one-to-one is basically what the reference point on chain is saying.
So John, to more like, you know, back to like the non-tag language, does that mean that NFT is a very safe way to transfer digital file?
It depends on the reference point, shall we say, right? So the NFT itself is probably very safe, but the off-chain data, right? So anything, the GIF or the JPEG or whatever it is that it's pointing to off-chain, that is the real bottleneck for security, right? Because garbage in, garbage out. If I'm referencing something that is not stored in a secure location, then even if the token itself is very secure, the off-chain data isn't secure, right? So I think going back to my reference point to IPFS, this is kind of like a image storage system. Once you upload an image, you can't take it off. It's there forever. And that's why I think that this, if you see an NFT with an IPFS address, typically speaking, you're pretty safe. That's pretty much the thought process you want to go to make sure, hey, I'm not going to get scammed. This is legitimate. And, you know, for the rest of time, as long as these servers are up, they will say that I own this token, or the person who has the private key owns that off-chain data.
I thank you so much, John, for this very theological answer to this. I guess we would like to go back a little bit backwards. So when you purchase, I would say when one of the collectors purchase an NFT art and digital art fair, is go through Refinable. So what is the logic behind it? Like how does it work?
Yeah, so basically Refinable as a NFT marketplace, we really are trying to make engaging with NFTs a lot more accessible for users, whether that's about finding an NFT that you like, or creating an NFT, or even trading an NFT, which is what most people are doing nowadays. We want to make that as easy as possible for most people. So that actually, there's a couple implications by what I mean by that. So whether it's supporting multiple networks such as Ethereum or Polygon or Solana or BSC, or even just adding more trading options such as offers or auctions or different, if you're going to auctions, there's like a limitless amount of customizations that you can run over there. So there's a lot of different depths that we can really go into. And I think NFTs are still quite new. So right now we're really building on the foundation of really just buying and selling at a fixed price, supporting English auctions on the platform. So now we've kind of worked on that for the last 2-3 months. So I'm really just enabling everything for the Digital Art Festival here for 2021. So it's been super exciting. And basically anything that you guys go through over there, then it just automatically is funded into your wallet. The tokens will definitely show up on your wallet to show that you have bought the actual NFT item. And basically everything will just transact immediately. So there's no processing time, there's no clearing time, similar to when you do a bank transfer or doing, say, even just pay me or anything along those lines. So it's definitely quite a new way to transact. And it's really cool to really be interacting and get your hands dirty to really, testing something out, what we call on-chain, which is directly interacting with the blockchain. So that's always there's always a first time for everyone. So it's always very exciting to see people, buy their first NFT, get their first Ethereum, and even just learn about what gas fees are. So it's all such a new experience. So we'd love to take that journey with you guys.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, definitely a very new experience, because I think today is the first day we open the door to VIPs, and I guess a lot of you have tried this scanning, and it goes directly to Refinable. And I think the next question, I think a lot of our art collectors are really interested to know as well, is that what is the problem that we're actually solving in the art world with blockchain technology? So and from your experience, both of you are very experienced in the NFT and blockchain industry. With Refinable technology or with blockchain technology, what problems are we actually solving right now in the art industry?
Yeah, I guess I can do a quick one. I'll pass it over to John. So one of the coolest things I think with NFT, like I said before, you can track anything. So what does this actually mean? So previously I work a lot in the digital space. So I think a lot of digital creators have the experience of, okay, I buy a digital domain like www.google.com, or I buy some stock photos, I buy a font, I buy perhaps some color kits done by another designer. Previously there's no way for me to resell these items out to recuperate some of my cost. Right. So for example, I buy a nice font, and in 5 years, I just kind of want to recuperate some of these costs just to make my life a little bit easier. It's impossible, right? You don't go on Asia Expat or eBay and see people selling a JPEG. It's crazy, 5 years ago. Like these things it literally doesn't happen. But I think with NFT, you actually have an official medium and way to kind of transact these things out. So that's kind of one way that me, from a builder's perspective, like analyzes of how these digital assets actually move around. So that's more from a utility side. But if you really go towards a digital art perspective, that just opens a whole new world, which I'm sure we'll go a little bit deeper later into.
Yeah, so I think let's look at two kind of demographics here. So the kind of gallery, more like sales side of like art, you have the advantage of consolidating provenance, you consolidating proof of purchase, proof of POA, POC, all those documents that typically you have to hound down, and then even the process of authentication for like higher value pieces can cost tens of thousands of dollars and months to actually get that piece in front of the people that can actually approve it, right? So I think by nature, we can put a lot of this on chain. So instead of having to like go around, like get these documents, are these documents real, get professionals to approve those documents, you can just look at the on-chain data and say, hey, I know for a fact that this is real, right? So I think that that's one big problem from my little experience dabbling in art that I think that this can potentially solve. Just from an operations perspective, it expedites things. It adds a degree of transparency because there's lots of forgeries in the art world, especially around documentation and stuff like that. So I think that it adds this layer of, it applies the trustless network mentality of blockchain and cryptocurrencies to art. So the other demographic is from the artist perspective, right? So how does this help artists? And I think that from both visual artists and musicians, there's this inability to really capture the royalties that are probably due, right? Once a piece gets sold, the visual artists, they never get royalties after that. As a musician, you have your manager, your record label, whoever else in between. And by the time you get your royalties, you have no visibility of how much as a percentage that actually was. And so what NFTs you can do with the new 1155 format is basically program this into it. So I'm the NFT creator. No matter how many times this NFT is sold, I will always get royalties. So that's a huge advantage for the artist, right? And I think that these two variables, both from the advantages to the gallery and the kind of like sales side, and the advantages to the artist, really are sincere edges that NFTs provide to the industry.
Oh, that's really good to hear what you mentioned about the smart contract, because as a gallerist myself, the paperwork really scares me, right? Like the invoicing, the contract, the artist contract, put it up online. So it kind of streamline quite a lot of things. I think my next question is going to come down to artists. What advantage it actually an NFT gives to an artist? For example, Sabotage. Here, he's one of the urban artists who's been selling physical work. What NFT art actually brings to him as an artist, instead of, for example, the smart contract you mentioned is for mostly for galleries, for art collectors. What about artists?
So I mean, again, I think it's the royalties, right? So no matter how many times his piece is sold, he can get royalties from that if he chooses to add that to the smart contract. So I think that that's the biggest advantage, that no matter what, he can take those royalties. Second of all, he no longer needs intermediaries to show his work and to get people to buy it. You know what I mean? So he can just go on Refinable himself, doesn't need anyone else to tell him what he can or cannot sell, and just gonna make money without any intermediaries, so that the margins are thicker. But I think beyond that as well, the advantage of kind of getting involved on a kind of more philosophical level is that the people that enter the space now will rally all of the kind of crypto degens, as we call ourselves, towards them, right? Because they're the first adopters of something that we are very passionate about, and building this kind of loyalty with the guys that are in this early are building loyalty with ultimately the people that are going to have the most in the future, because we got in sooner when we bought ETH when it's like $100 or whatever, right? So I think that there's many layers to that, but I think on a functional level, it's the royalties and the ability to not have to worry about galleries, not have to worry about agents or what have you, to show their work and to make money from people that reach their audience more directly, and without having to worry about the paperwork, without having to worry about like the legal side and all that kind of stuff, because it's a trustless network. You trust the blockchain. You don't have to trust all these intermediaries anymore.
So I guess we have to trust the technology in that sense, that the technology got to work. So again, next question will go to Nick. So I think a lot of us, obviously we were told that smart contract would work, but how does that work? Like what's the logic behind it?
Yeah, so essentially a smart contract is just a fancy way of saying it's a computer program, right? So instead of relying on the overhead or paperwork, as you say, a lot of these things you can actually write into a program. I mean, the math is not that hard. For example, every time a work gets sold, 10% goes to A, 50% goes to B, 30% goes to C, and then every time that goes on, then it repeats. So right now you see a lot of these overhead issues, I guess, with the paperwork, where every time something is transacted, they have to, number one, report it. Number two, paperwork has to go through. Number three, you have to split all the finances and the tokens to whoever. But now with a computer program, you can actually just write it all in. You know, we take a little bit more time to set it up in the early stages, and then basically it just runs forever. Technically, there's no overhead cost except for electricity. Maybe you don't have to hire someone. You don't have to, rent an office or buy paper or pens. Like, forget about it. You can actually just have something that runs on the public blockchain, which is just by a bunch of computers. And every time this kind of like gets bought and sold, someone else's computers are doing the work. You will never have manual error. It will never really kind of run into those things. So I do think this is one of the greatest benefits. But I think one thing I do want to add on to, I guess, the last question to John is, I think the big benefit of NFT is artists are getting a lot of validation for their work right now. I think artists that primarily work in digital arts is seeing a huge resurgence of this validation from the market of what their art is actually worth. I think, Joyce, if I kind of have a video that I would like to show of a video. So it's one of our more game artists is designing one of these artworks. But I think if you actually see the video of these works getting designed, it's no different from actually painting something that's in the real world. So I think artists now are really taking a lot of time to really just make art like, I mean, the process is the same thing of doing the base layers, putting the colors on top. So there's a lot of these aspects of actually designing that's the same thing. But in the past, like 10 years, sites like DeviantArt and all these things, they just display digital art for free. That's actually insane. And now people are actually finding validation in the market. They're getting paid for their work. And I think this is one of the biggest benefits with NFTs is that, digital artists are really getting the spotlight they finally deserve. And I think with someone like Beeple, who's just been creating artwork for 600 days nonstop, that work is definitely worth something. So I think it's really good that artists are getting that validation. And besides all the automation and the royalties, like this is a huge movement, especially with this fair and all the sort of attention that it brings. It kind of really validates all of the work that these artists are putting in. And I think that's the biggest impact that NFT is really bringing in at this current point in time.
Thank you. I really agree with the putting on the artist on the stage of the spotlight. It's traditionally it's galleries that is in the spotlight. Which gallery is selling what? And now we're focusing more on artists because you go on an NFT platform. I look at the artist profile page more than often. But I do have a question, and I think I get that question quite a lot from other art collectors as well, and also something that's very important. We heard a lot of great things about NFT, but we have also heard quite a few problems from different newspaper. It's mostly concerned about when I collect an NFT. We obviously have the crypto wallet and on my computer, on my phone. A lot of us, first question is it safe? Because it's on my phone, it's on my computer. What if someone hacked it? And obviously we have quite a few news come out last week. Maybe is that safe? I think that's a big question.
So I think this is more of a security question on like a fundamental level. So this is part of what we focus on and Run the Chain. Genesis Block, one of the sponsors here, they focus on as well, is that they give free education. We give free education to people on security specifically for this, right? And the issue that we've seen time and time again is that people, they don't learn about security first. They hear about their friends, hey, I made a bunch of money on Bitcoin, bunch of money on Uniswap, whatever. And then they get into the space without doing their own research on what's safe, right? So if you know that you need to keep your seed safe, like, piece of paper with your wallet at, like, the words that add up to be your wallet, you need to store that in a safe place. I think a lot of times people are either they set up their wallet, don't save their seed, lose their phone, and then all their funds are gone. So they took a screenshot on their phone of the seed, and then they lose their phone, but they also had their wallet on their phone. That's gone, right? Also, like clicking random links, and this is becoming more and more common, to where someone will DM you on Telegram, and anyone who's in crypto space knows admins will never DM you. People who are DMing you are probably scammers, and they'll be like, hey, you know what? I want to help you. Like, if you're to my platform, like, oh no, I haven't. They click on a link, click on the link, it links with your MetaMask, and it just pulls out all your funds, right? So it's a double-edged sword, right? Because it's in line with kind of like the philosophy behind like Bitcoin, be your own bank, control your own funds. This is financial freedom, right? But that also means that if you're expecting like a central organization to come in and help you reclaim your funds, that's just not going to happen, right? It's part of the risk you take in taking responsibility for your own cash, right? So I think that it is safe if you follow the safety protocols you should in order to engage with the space safely. However, it is unsafe if you just kind of jump into the space without understanding the basics of keeping your seed safe, not clicking random links, and just proper etiquette when engaging with people in the crypto space, because there are a lot of scammers out there, and it's not unique to cryptos. I think it's people lose a bunch in cryptos just like anywhere else, but I think that it's one of those things to where people FOMO, as we call it, fear of missing out, into cryptos without like doing their proper research.
So I think generally the blockchain is it's such an interesting system because there's so much security built into the actual system. But I think what Gillian was also alluding to in terms of just the technical safety side, there's also just like the soft safety stuff, such as, oh, if I buy an NFT, how do I know it's real? How do I know it's not a scam? But again, I think some of these issues are not very they're not particular just to NFTs, because if you go into, I guess, outside of Louvre in France or in Paris, you can find very, very real replicas of Van Gogh's items or Mona Lisa's items. So there's a business of bad business out there in whatever field that you're in, whether it's art, traditional art, or just in banking, or just, Nigerian princes wanting to give you money. So there's all of these scams that are always happening, and it's going to exist anywhere in the world. But I do think the fascinating thing with blockchain is that it's all public, and you can always do your own due diligence and do your own research and to figure out, hey, is this person right? Is this person who they say they are, or do they have a history of doing something? So I do think blockchain does give a lot of the power back to the users. I think that's really what it means to be decentralized, and so people have the option of doing that. And I do think that is sort of the new norm for digital transactions and digital culture in the world. And I think just to add on a little bit, I think a couple of weeks ago, there was a big hack for billions of dollars on the blockchain, but the entire community, which was not run by a central entity, that a bunch of good, willing people managed to control the damage in place and get the funds returned. So there is a whole community of very, very, very well-intentioned people out there trying to build everything and make sure it's all okay. It is still definitely new. But hey, if this hack was to happen in the traditional finance industry, you might not even have heard about it. So I think this is some of the pros and cons that people don't really get the inside scoop of. So I do think it's a good thing to sort of to pay attention to. But like John said, if you follow the good security protocols and processes and practice, it is very, very safe.
Great to hear that. Okay, so another question I got from my artists quite a lot as well, and I would love to use the opportunity to have you answer to them, because a lot of them are here listening right now. One thing that's known about cryptocurrency is it goes ups and down really quickly. And obviously, it affects the artists because they got paid in cryptocurrencies, in Ethereum or Bitcoin or BSC. How would you say to that? Like, if it goes up and down so quick, is it something that they should go for? Is it something that they should consider? What currency should they take, for example?
I think this is a great question for John, but just to give my 2 cents, I do think with Ether goes up and down, we all enjoy the ride. It is not just the artists, but the companies as well and the investors. So it is not just a solo thing. But I do think we are at a point in time where the US dollar is really strong. But for example, if you don't live in the US or in Hong Kong and some other country, you might experience these great fluctuations in your own currency. So I do think right now there's a huge resurgence in all of these community-oriented items that are coming up, and we're going to move towards a very multi-currency format or lifestyle. So I think it is about getting used to these all new things coming in together and being familiar with these items. So I do think we're still very, very new. I think it might be a great, great diversifying tactic to your portfolio to invest into some other tokens. But I think this is definitely a part of the new future that it's starting to see.
Yeah, so I think this is more of a question about like trading strategy and appetite for risk, right? So I think as an artist, obviously, there's always that saying like starving artist, right? So I think that it's important to capture some form of profit, right? So yes, we all, like Nick said, we all ride the same ride, right? Like if you guys are like losing money, we're definitely losing money too. But I think that it's about, once you do sell a piece, my appetite for risk, say 20%. I want 20% exposure in Ethereum, right? Maybe you're in the space, you want a little bit of exposure, have a little bit of access to the action, but also understandably you want to capture profit. And I mean, I encourage it as well, right? USD, it's or stablecoin equivalent, that's not going to fluctuate pretty much anything, right? Like it's bips, if anything, right? Versus Ethereum, which might go up or down by double-digit percentages in a day, a week, who knows, right? But I think that it really comes down to your personal appetite for risk and what you believe in Ethereum, Bitcoin, BSC, whatever currency that you're accepting for your NFT. Do you believe in that currency? If you believe in it, then probably, maybe you want 50% appetite of risk, right? But I think it really comes down to what is your appetite for risk and how much you want to capture and how much you believe in the blockchain.
Thank you. I think I got my last question, and then I'm going to go to Q&A. So both of you, this is a question that I got from one of my artists. What do you think is the new trend of cryptocurrency and NFT art? Obviously, this year is a massive surge of NFT art, and I think we all agree to that. But what is next? What do you think is going to happen in 2022?
I think right now we're definitely seeing the resurgence of NFTs, right? I think they first came about 2 years ago. No one really paid that much attention. I think now digital art and people really kind of shot up digital art to that space. And it's great that a lot of artists are getting the validation that they deserve. But I do think after that, there's going to be a lot more utility-based application of NFTs, and I guess in the gaming side, in the real world side. So that's something that I'm personally very, very interested about. So I know John's probably going to talk a little bit more, but I do think now on the gaming side, you see a new trend called play to earn, right? Previously in Candy Crush, there's only money going in, there's never money out for you. But now technically you can actually play a game and earn enough to actually make money. So I do think this is such an interesting concept that a lot of people haven't wrapped their heads around because it is just so different. But I do think this is a huge trend that NFTs can definitely help propel. And it's something that's something that I'm positively very looking forward to.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that we're just scratching the surface as far as what the possibilities for the NFT ecosystem are. I think art is kind of like the cornerstone of many different verticals that we're going to touch on. I think that NFT gaming applications are massive, let alone like data applications, property applications. Like there's just so many things that we can do with it that I don't even want to predict what's going to happen. I do know that gaming is going to probably be on there, but who knows who will find another unique application for NFTs that we haven't even imagined yet.
I think now we have to go to the Q&A session. All right, if anyone have a question, please raise your hand.
What do you believe NFT technology means for media platforms? So if I'm a creator today and I post content online, for instance, I don't necessarily own the content, but the media company itself does. I get profits from the viewership of posting the content online and the users get to rent it out. But realistically, it's the media companies like YouTube or TikTok or whoever else that actually own it. What do you believe NFT technology will do to those types of platforms?
Oh, this is sorry, Nick. I'm about to show only one. So a project that we work with on the Run the Chain side, they are trying to tackle this issue, right? The simplest form is that there are only fans on Solana. But what this means as a content creator is that, like, Facebook, Instagram, they're just shells, right? The users are creating the real value of that platform. And the user doesn't profit from that at all. So what platforms like Only One are trying to do is like, hey, I'm a creator. And in fact, if you're a good enough creator, you meet the criteria for their platform, they'll give you money in a pool on your platform. If you get enough users that are like, hey, I like you, I like your content, I'm staking in your pool, you unlock rewards by nature on their platform for that user. And beyond that, it could be someone that say, hey, I'm a really good trader. Here's my top 5 token picks for next week. Then user, my biggest fan, comes in, I want to buy that NFT outright. And the other user's like, hey, I like you, I want to see this content, but I don't want to buy the NFT. Maybe I just want to see it. So user A, who bought out the NFT outright from me, the content creator, he paid $500 to own it, right? Everyone else who wants to see it, maybe they're paying like $50, who knows? But in that kind of like ecosystem, it's the creators that really have the control. So I know I'm shilling up a platform specifically, but they are trying to tackle this problem. And I think that there are many platforms out there trying to bring power back to the content creators, back to the people really generating the revenue for these massive platforms, right? Because without the users, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, they're useless, right? So I think that it's really empowering to see platforms like this, and that's kind of like, of course I got a shill project I'm working with, but full grain of, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But I think that guys like Only One really are driving the kind of content creator on a more social media level as far as like how to like benefit users.
I think 100%. You see a lot of these new projects coming up, like Only One, who basically creates their entire product around the creator or content creators. But I think a lot of different companies, maybe perhaps Facebook or even agency styles, I think when they work with NFTs, they have a particularly interesting challenge because they work with existing systems such as, the YouTube itself owns the content or someone else, and they try to fit something new into an old system. So I think with NFTs, it doesn't really solve existing issues. It's a new tool, but you still have to somehow fit it into an existing model to make sure that it works. For example, if an artist is part of an agency and they create the NFT, who does the content really belong to? I think technically you still have real world, applications and business stuff to worry about. And just because something is on an NFT doesn't mean it will magically solve a lot of these issues. In fact, it might even bring up more questions, but I think these questions are definitely things that will help bring things into the new age of kind of like decentralizing and owning more of your stuff yourself. But I would say that, some of these agencies and intermediaries are there for a certain purpose. For example, like a marketing agency or an agency that can help put creators in front of a lot of people. So you see a lot of these like interesting things happening at play. And I would say there's a combination of, selling directly to the fans is one way, but also going through intermediaries such as, selling on Amazon or creating your own e-commerce stores are all very viable methods of, business.
Any other questions?
Can I ask a question to John? So, John, what are some of the biggest, what are some of the most trending projects out there that you see in the NFT space beyond simply like digital artists creating digital art? Can you talk a little bit more about what you've recently kind of invested into?
So yeah, I think trending wise, the NFT gaming space is really where the pulse is outside of arts and collectibles, right? I think that what Animoca is doing is brilliant. They really are, we stand on their shoulders to a degree, even in the collectible side, because they've been doing this for so long. But I think that the amount of AAA rated NFT blockchain games that are coming out, or at least allegedly will be coming out, I think that's making me bullish because we haven't achieved that degree of like, hey, this is on par with like Fortnite, what have you. So I think NFT gaming is very interesting. I also think the applications of decentralized journalism are very interesting. And like what I mentioned earlier with data, right? So we're working on something that's a little bit hush-hush at the moment, but the idea is that we create NFTs that correlate with data, like sequence data from, somewhere, shall we say, right? And then we have like someone come in that's like a researcher or a PhD guy that wants to take that research, add his interpretation, and then you have the raw data value, then you have the interpreted data value, then you burn that and mint a new NFT that has the interpreted plus the sequence data value. So I think that this has like, this branches far outside of like collectibles and arts and all the applications therein. But I think that there are a lot of really interesting things happening in different verticals that are applying NFTs. And a lot of it's leaning on or standing on the shoulder of the NFT technology we've developed for these trading marketplaces, such as Refinable, Only One, what have you.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions from the audience? I actually have one more for John, actually from myself. I get quite a lot of questions from media and journalists asking about how new NFT art is actually killing the art industry. So as the cryptocurrency new company is hurting the financial industry. What's your view on that? Is that what cryptocurrency going to take over the world and what is going to happen?
So I think that there are some parallels, right, as far as value add from the NFT space to the traditional art space. But by and large, this isn't cannibalization of the traditional art space. This is the introduction of an entirely new community that is now passionate about art. If anything, this will benefit them. This is an injection of new capital from a new demographic, right? To my knowledge, a lot of these kind of like auctions are pretty, the age is kind of like much higher, right? So this is an injection of much younger people to their ecosystem, potentially, right? I think that there is some stigma right now as far as, to some degree, the traditional art space kind of feeling like we're taking their lunch money, or we're coming into this without kind of like, consulting them or whatever. But I think that it's a different kind of art. It's a completely different style of, I mean, if you look at Bored Ape Yacht Club, that's completely out of line of what traditional art space is kind of about, right? You could parallel some things with Warhol, but I think the culture, the injection of kind of people, they traditionally wouldn't have invested in art, right? But now that they're into NFTs, perhaps we can bridge them over to the art space. So I think more than anything, it's not a cannibalization of traditional art space. I think it's about growth of this entirely new segment.
Actually, I would just add one more thing is I think John and I actually gave a specific talk about this, about how digital art may or may not be cannibalizing the traditional art sector. But I think one of the conclusions that we came up with is that with these new NFT items, they're not the same thing as, say, buying a Picasso or buying something that you can hang up in your living room to put the room together. For example, there's a lot of NFT items such as these profile pictures. I think a lot of people have seen. I'm very surprised that we actually didn't even mention CryptoPunks in your answers. So with CryptoPunks and these Bored Ape Yacht Clubs, you see all these profile pictures that are coming up. So yes, they are included as NFT art, but people don't hang them up in their room. I think they can, but most likely people are using them as profile pictures. So really the money that I'm spending to hang something in my room is not the same amount of money that I'm going to spend on, say, a new profile picture or a nice little domain name for my blog or something else. So I do think there's new things to display. For example, like Rafik Anadol's immersion rooms downstairs. There's no way I'm hanging that up in my living room. There's a time and place for this. So I don't think it's cannibalizing in the sense that the amount of money that I'm spending for this is taken away from the amount of money I'm going to spend on a painting to hang in my room. I do think it's a new type of asset and a new type of thinking and a new type of spending category in the digital realm that's really going to come back.
Okay, thank you. I think we have time for one last question. Anyone?
I would ask Gillian one question. So as an art curator, and I think as an organizer of the digital art festival, I think a lot of the art here is definitely still very much in the art realm. But for these new types of items that we've sort of brought up just now with these Bored Ape Yacht Clubs and the CryptoPunks, how do you see these as a art curator? Would you ever dabble in these and sort of selling these to other individuals, or do you see these in the same realm?
I look at this as, okay, so I think for me, I look at them all as art, as an art curator. It's just a different way to display them. The reason that digital art fair happened is because when I look at this website, when I go on Refinable, when I go on Superware or Web Foundation, I look at the little pictures and I thought to myself, these are really great art. These people actually put a lot of time and a lot of thoughts, and with different program or different way animated it, making video art. They put loads of time in it. But just because it's on a computer screen and it's this big, it doesn't look good. So that's why digital art fair happened. And that's why we have the immersive art room. And that's why we have this big Samsung TV, the art frame TV to display the art. And it's not new at all. Like you go to the shopping mall, you go to the museum, sometimes they have a big LED wall like this to display art. It's not new at all. But for me, putting that and curating that, it's just another way to display art in a new technological way with a new screen, a better representation. And I look at NFT as a way to transition. To be able to own a piece of video art is not new. It has been happening for 10 years. You can go on Instagram, you can buy something, you go rent a movie. It's nothing new. But when we talk about art, I think people think of it as a much more distant thing. Oh, you can buy art this way. I do think that NFT art brings a lot of new way of exhibiting art for a lot of artists, but of course there are still a lot of questions regarding to the technology, and I also believe that in the next couple years, the technology going to evolve. It's going to change. It's going to get better. And I believe that more and more artists gonna come out, and in digital art fair, we're looking forward to show more interesting art, more exciting artists.
Thank you.
All right. I think the time is up. Thank you so much.